Hey everyone, and welcome to the Stitch Sessions. Fall is here and it's starting to get a little bit chillier. So today we're going to do a tutorial on how to make this really neat V-stitch triangle scarf. As you can tell, it's made up of many triangles, and you can make it as long as you like or as short as you like, depending on who you're going to make it for. You can make it for a child or an adult or basically anybody who likes scarves. It's a really great way to stay cozy as the temperature drops, and you can make it in any colors you like. In my case, I made mine in pink and cream, and this is great for beginners going into intermediate level crocheters. So without further ado, let's grab our materials and let's get started. Okay, let's get started. For this project, I am using some of my yarn stash. This is a medium weight 4 yarn. I have my two colors, so in my case I'm using the light pink and the beigey white. So you can use any two colors you like. Definitely want to try and use contrasting colors, and that way you can see the effects of the triangle. So I have that. You're going to need a pair of scissors and your yarn needle, definitely going to need that. And for this project, I am using a 5.5 millimeter hook. I could get away with using a 5, but I like the idea of my stitches being just a little bit looser, just to give it a little bit of a fluffier look. So here we go. So I think I will start with the pink. So we're going to start off our triangle with a slip knot, and we are going to chain 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so what's going to happen next is we're going to do a double crochet into the bottom stitch, so the 5th stitch there. So we're going to yarn over, insert our hook, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2, and yarn over, pull through 2. So what this has done is created our first V. So the V stitch consists of a double crochet, a chain 1, and a double crochet. So we've chained 5 so that we have 1 is our base here. Then we have 3 to create the height of our double crochet, and then we have a 4th to create that chain 1 space. So it'll start to take shape in a second once we do the next row. So this is row 1, that's our first little V. We are now going to proceed to chain 1, 2, 3, and then 4. So remember that 3 stitches create the height of a double crochet, and then we've got to have a single chain to create this top part of our V. We'll then turn over, and we're going to do a double crochet into the bottom of that stitch. So we're going to yarn over, insert our hook, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. So there we've created another V on the corner of this V. Now what we're going to do is we're going to create a V stitch in the center of this V, just in that chain space there. So we will yarn over, insert our hook into the space, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. So that's a double crochet. We now do a chain 1, yarn over, and do another double crochet into that space. So now we have 2 V's. We've got 1 V sitting on the corner, and we've got another V sitting in the center. We want to create 1 more V on the opposite corner here. So what we really want to get into here is to find the top of this stitch here. So sometimes it's hard to see because that's the back. So I'll turn it over and I'll count my stitches here. So I've got 1, 2, and 3. So that's the top of my chain 3. I don't count this one here at the bottom because that's the base of my V. See that? So I count 1, 2, and 3. So I'll just turn that over, and I know that's the chain I'm going to double crochet into. So I'll yarn over, insert my hook into the top of that chain 3, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. That's one double crochet. We now chain 1, and we do another double crochet into that same chain space. Yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. So now we have a bigger V forming. And don't worry, there's a little kink here. That generally will straighten out as your triangle shape starts to take form. So how this motif is worked is we start at the point of the triangle and work our way up. So it'll end up being like that. So this is row 2. We're going to do 6 rows. So we're going to continue. We're going to chain 4 again. 1, 2, 3. That's our double crochet height, and then a 4th for the space of the V. We will turn over and double crochet into the base of that stitch. And this is what allows us to continually increase our top row there of the triangle. So we keep getting triangles on top of corners of triangles there. Next, we want to find the space between these two triangles. So see, there's a triangle and there's a triangle, or a V. That's why they call it a V-stitch. So I want to V-stitch in between those two V's. So I will yarn over, insert my hook into the space, pull through 2, pull through 2. So that's a double crochet. I will then chain 1 and double crochet again into that space. And there we've created another V. So now this V is sitting in between these two V's. Let's do that again in the next space. So we've got the V at the end, and then we've got this one here. So we want to double crochet into this space. So we will yarn over first, insert, pull through 2, double crochet there, chain 1, and another double crochet into the space. See, it's coming up pretty cool. Okay, one more we've got going on here. So remember, this is the end. We need to find the top of our chain 3. So we've got 1, 2, and 3. And see this 4th one? That's the chain 1 space we want to create. So we want to leave that one. So we yarn over and we insert our hook into the 3rd chain there, and we double crochet into that chain. We chain 1 to create the top of the V, and then we double crochet back into the same stitch. And there we have row 3. So I like to lay it down sometimes so I can really see the shape forming. You're always going to get in the beginning, there's a little kink that happens there, but again, once we do the full 6 rows, it stretches out a bit, so that'll all go away. Okay, on to row 4. We will chain 3 plus 1 and turn our work. Double crochet into the base of that stitch to create our first V-stitch. Then we find the space in between the 2 V-stitches in the row below, so that's right here. So I'm going to do a double crochet into that space, chain 1, and another double crochet into that space. And that'll give you your next V. And we continue on in the same pattern. We find the next space, and we go right into there and do a double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, V-stitch. Such a great pattern. And we will repeat that again in the next space between the two V's of the previous row. Double crochet, chain 1, double crochet again. And one more at the end here, so we find 1, 2, and 3. We double crochet into that chain, chain 1, and double crochet again into that chain space. So we can definitely see our triangle taking shape. So we've got rows 1, 2, 3, 4, and you can see that we increase a V with each row. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The previous row had 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and the only one that jumps one is this first one. And that's simply because I wanted the triangle to go wider a little bit sooner. So we went from 1V to 3 in this case, but then it proceeded to 4 and 5. So we're now go on to the next row where you'll have 6 V's. Okay, we're almost there. So 1, 2, 3, plus 1 is 4. Double crochet into the corner. Okay, and find your space and double crochet there, chain 1, and double crochet into there. You create your V. So on each end, we always add a V in the corner of that V stitch, and then we do one V stitch in between all the V stitches of this row. On the other end, we always add an additional V to the corner. Okay, so I'm going to let you go ahead and finish that. So in this row, we're going to have 6 V stitches across. You'll chain 3 plus 1, turn your work, and remember that we're doing a V stitch in the corner of that previous V, and repeat again, a V stitch in between the V stitches of the previous row. And in the last row, you should have 7 V stitches at the end. So that is the size of our triangle for our triangle scarf. So finish that there, and then I'll meet you at the end. So I've come to the end of my 6th row, and I have 7 V stitches in this row. So if I count them, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And I make sure I have 6 rows. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So that is the size of my triangle. This measures approximately 5 inches. Actually, I better double check that. Yes, it does. So that when we put it together with another triangle, we have a nice square there, the 2 triangles. So you have 5 inches up and 5 inches across. So you have a perfect square. So for your scarf, I always kind of tend to make them just below my hip line, and that's approximately 60 inches. So I know that if this square is 5 by 5, I will need to make 12 of these to create the scarf of the length that I want. So that all depends. If you want to make a super, super long scarf, you definitely need more squares, or if you want to make it just slightly shorter, that's completely up to you. So I would say, give or take, that each one of these triangles is going to take about 5 to 10 grams of yarn. So if you're getting, like I'm using a Lion brand package, which is 100 grams, you could easily do your 12 squares for each of these colors out of that 100 gram package. So now I'm just finishing up this my pink portion. What I'm going to do with this one is I'm going to leave a little bit of a longer tail so that I can now connect these two together, sew them together to create a square. Okay, so I would say, give or take, I just stretch it once and stretch it twice, and I would say that's a decent length where I feel like I won't run out. So, oops, and actually I should fasten that off. Okay, that's the other thing with this particular scarf is there's just a lot of little ends and bits, so I would definitely recommend to sew your ends as you go, and we'll do that in a minute. So with this one, you see how the stitches, this is right side facing up, and how you can tell your right side is if your top row, the tops of the stitches are visible. If I were to turn this over, you can see that that is the back side of my work. So I'm going to have the front side of my work both facing up, and see how they create a ridge here? The V's meet here. What I want to do is I want to fold this over so that the right sides are facing each other. Okay. I also know, because I counted, and remember it's always important to count, that I should have 21 stitches across on each of these sides. So one V represents 3 stitch counts. So if I have 7 V's, that's going to give me 21 stitches. So now with this long side here, what I want to do is I want to make sure that all of my stitches match up with each other. So what I am going to do is I am now going to sew, I'm just going to whip stitch these 2 triangles together, but I am going to pick up the back loop here of this triangle, and I'm going to match it up with the front loop of this one. So basically it's the outside loops of these 2 triangles, so that I'm pinching in the outside loops to each other. Okay, so let me just thread my yarn needle here. There we go. And so this is the part that can be a little bit fiddly, but just be patient. You'll get it. So remember how we said the chain 3 is the height of a double crochet plus a chain 1 to create the space of the V. So we want to find the top of the chain 3 to match with the top of this stitch here, because this is a double crochet. So I am just going to look at my work here, open that up a bit, and I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, and then there's a chain 1 there, and there's a double crochet. So that is the right stitch. So now I'm just going to make sure I catch the outside loop, and I'm going to match it to the outside loop of this stitch here. So they're perfectly matched up. Just going to bring that through, and I don't want to pull too tight. I just want it to be snug because I don't want it to bunch up. Great, so that's 1. Now I'm going to go into the very next loop, which will be the chain 1 space, which will be that stitch there. It's a wee bit tight. Oops. It's being a bit fiddly. So this is the, okay, so we have this one here, and we are matching it up with the outside. There we go. The outside of that one. Whew! Sometimes it takes a little getting used to there. Okay. We are on track here. So now we go up to the next stitch. So this would be the top of the double crochet of the V. Okay, and I'm going to match it with the top part of the double crochet of this V. So the outside stitch here. Sorry guys. And we pull that through. Okay. And again, I go to the next stitch. I take the outside and I match it with the outside of the facing stitch, and I gently pull through. Again, I find the outside stitch there. I match up with the forward. See the outside stitch of the one right across from it, and I pull through. So you're going to do that all the way across until you get to the end. I've just gotten to the end of whip stitching my 2 triangles together. So that is the back side. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to gently yet firmly tie these little tails together to secure that sewing in place there. And I always like to do 3 knots. Okay. So now we're going to turn it over to the right side, and we've got this fabulous square with these 2 triangles. So if you can see on the back, we had sewed in the stitches that were closest to each other, and on the front just creates this cool little ridge, but it seamlessly, can hardly tell how they were put together, which is pretty neat. Okay. And again, you know, lay it flat, smooth it out a little bit. You are going to have a little bit of wonkiness here on the edges. Again, that's nothing that later on with a little bit of blocking won't solve that. So what I'd like to encourage you to do now is actually just pause the video for a second and sew in these little ends in. Because what we're going to do now is create a little single crochet border. Because we're going to be using different colors, opposite colors for each border, these little ends are going to get in the way. So let's just take a few minutes, pause the video, and just sew in your ends, and we will continue on after that. Okay, I've sewn in all my ends here, and this is where things can get really interesting. We now want to create actually just one like this. So we want to create a border using single crochets, but we're going to do it in the opposite color. So notice my pink triangle has a beige border. My beige triangle has the pink border. So if you notice now, the side that had proper stitches are sewn together. So what we have remaining are the sides of our work. So these are the sides of the stitches. So remember, the rows actually go this way. So we now have to negotiate single crochets into the sides of these stitches. Because these are double crochets, they generally will take 2 single crochets into the side of each stitch to create that same height. So since we have 6 rows and we're going to do 2 single crochets into each of these sides, you're going to have a total of 12, but it doesn't stop there. We also need to crochet around the corners and create these nice corners, which will require an additional 2 single crochets, 1 in each corner, plus a chain 2. So 12 plus 2 additional single crochets is 14, and a chain 2 is 16. So in the end, you want to make sure that each side of your square has 16 stitches. And that way, later on, when we sew these together, they will all match. Now, just so you know, it does get a little bit funky and wonky in these corners. So that's why I suggested sewing your ends. Oops, I forgot one there. Before starting the border, because then it just gets them out of the way. So let's give this a go. So we're going to start off with a slip knot. And because I'm starting with the pink, I'm going to start at the bottom of my beige triangle. So what I'm going to do, the idea of the single crochets generally is that I'm going to put a single crochet in the base here and then a single crochet in the middle of this stitch. Then I'm going to single crochet in the base of the V and in the middle of the stitch, the base and the middle, the base and the middle. This will close up any gaps and really smooth out that edge. So remember how I said there's going to be a little kink here? This will help to smooth that edge out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find a spot right here in the corner. And actually, instead of the slip stitch, I am going to single crochet right away. So I've got the loop on my hook here from the slip knot. I'm going to pull through and I'm going to pull through these two. So technically that's already a single crochet. That's going to be my corner single crochet. So now I will continue on. I'm going to place one in the base here, pull through. Now I'm going to work into the side of this stitch, which can be funny. So this actually is the double crochet. Some of them will be chain threes, but this one is a double crochet because it's a little bit looser in the side. So you just find a nice spot that it will kind of ease nicely into. Pull your yarn through and pull through. Okay. And now this one's a little easier because I'm going to go right into the base of that V. Pull through, single crochet. Now I'm going to go into the side of this stitch. So I'm just going to insert it nicely wherever it will fit. Pull through. Now I'm going to go into the base here. Pull through. So see, it's starting to really smooth out this edge. So far I have, including that first single crochet, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I'm going to need 10 more stitches to get me across the side of this first triangle. Here I am on my 12th stitch. So I just need to put one into the side here. That's 13. Now I'm going to go into the corner here. That's the 14th stitch. And now chain 2 for 15 and 16. I will then go back into this same stitch and do another single crochet, and that will be the beginning of my next side. Now don't worry that this is a little bit funny on the corner. When you lay it flat and you do a little bit of blocking as well, it will all straighten out. But see how nice that edge is coming along? Really pretty. So we're going to go ahead to the other side here, continuing with the pink. So we've already done one single crochet in that corner. So we've got the side here. Now this side is the funnier one because they're mostly chain threes coincidentally on this side. So we want to find an open or loose stitch that we can insert our hook into somewhere in the middle. And again, try to keep your stitches somewhat loose. You don't want to tighten it up too much. Now I'm at the base here, so that's a little easier to find. Insert there. That's a single crochet. Now I'm going into the side, chain 3, somewhere in here. And I'm going to go into the base, a little easier to see. Into the side. And to the base. So there we go. So see, it's starting to straighten out quite nicely there. So continue on to the end, and then we're going to actually change colors to the beige. So that's where it might get a little bit interesting, but again, nothing you can't handle, just going to take a little bit of patience. So just finish these other few single crochets to your corner, and I'll meet you there. Okay, again, I'm at my 12th stitch, and so this V can be deceiving because it's like, okay, where do I go from here? It looks a bit rounded. So this is my 12th stitch. My 13th stitch, this is the side of the V. If you look at it, like that. That's the side of the V. So I need to do my 13th stitch into the side of this stitch somewhere. So I'm going to insert my hook. So that's stitch 13. And now here's the base. That's stitch 14. And remember, we need chain 2 for the corner. 1, but I'm not going to do 2 in the pink. Now we're going to switch over to the beige. Okay, so this is where it's going to get interesting. So I'm just going to leave that there before I fasten that off. I'm going to reintroduce my beige. And what I want to do is I want to do the second chain using this new color. So I'm just going to put that on the hook there. And I'm going to pull it through the pink. I will secure the pink down a bit, but I don't want to overly tighten it because, again, that's supposed to count as one of my chains. And if I tie it too tightly, it'll become a knot. So this is now my second chain. I will then continue on to work across this side in a single crochet, but I need to go back into that corner. So just to kind of even this out a bit, I am going to insert just beside that. See, this is where it gets wonky because there's a lot of tails happening here. And oops, I split my yarn. So that's where you can see my 14th stitch was. The 15th is the chain, and the 16th is this chain that I just did right there. So what I'm going to do, just to round this corner off, instead of going right there, I'm going to go just right beside it to create a little bit more of a rounded edge. So just pull that through. Again, I'm using the beige end, not the pink. And then I will pull through, single crochet. So that's in the corner there. Now I will proceed to go into the base of the V here. Whoops, my pink is getting in the way there. Oy. There we go. And now I'm going into the side of this stitch. And then the base of the following stitch. So see, it kind of creates a cool little color contrast between the pink and the beige. Pretty neat. So I'll continue along going into the side of the stitch. Again, the chain 3s might be a little funky. Single crochet, and then the base of the stitch. Into the side. And then into the base. So do that all the way across until you get to your corner. And remember, you need to do a single crochet, chain 2, single crochet, and then continue on. This will give you the 16 stitches along each side. And once you get here, you can fasten off. So pause the video there and go ahead and do that all the way around, and I'll meet you just about at the end. I am at my 13th stitch, just down at the other end here. So I will go into the last corner stitch here. That's my 14th stitch. So you can see how that is shaping up quite nicely there. And so I need to do my chain 2, 1, 2. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a seamless join technique. So I'm going to snip my yarn, and with that second chain still made there or still unresolved, I'm just going to pull through. So you do have your 2 chains, you have your 1 and your 2. I'm not going to pull tight because I'm not technically fastening off there. I'm going to do what I call an invisible join in there. So I'm just going to get my yarn needle here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to find the top of that first single crochet, which is right there. And I'm going to, see, that was done a bit too tight. So I'm going to insert my needle, my yarn needle through there, through the bottom of those two loops, and I'm going to feed this through. Gently, not too tight, because I don't want to pull this closed. Okay. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back through the top of this loop and out the bottom. So when you do that, it makes it look like it's another chain stitch. So see? So just gently pull it, and unfortunately you can see the knot of the pink, but if it wasn't there, you'd have a seamless join. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to tie off to this pink here tail. Again, not too tight, because you don't want to you don't want your work to become uneven or squished. So just enough that I can create a couple of knots there to secure my work. And there you have it. So the triangles are nicely put together. Again, this could use a little bit of blocking to just straighten them out. And so then you will proceed to put your squares together. So this is only 5 inches across. What we are going to do is we will do a final border around. You could do, if you wanted to, a thicker width like that and work your way across that way. I think for me that might be a bit too thick, considering I am making this for a young person, so a toddler. So I don't necessarily need it to be that thick, that wide across, sorry. But you can put your squares together in any design you like. So you may want to do it where all the, oops, there we go, where you're creating stripes with each color on an angle, like that. Okay, I'll just move this over. Okay, so that you just see like a stripe going across, a pink on an angle. You may want to turn it around so that they're all opposites. Okay, like that. So you definitely see different triangles. Okay, alternating pink, beige, pink, beige, pink, beige. You may also want to accentuate the triangle, and you may want to put the beige triangles together and the pink triangles together. So that will accentuate this into a bigger triangle and this one into a bigger triangle. Totally and completely up to you. So why don't you go ahead and make all the squares required for your particular scarf. In my case, it's going to be 12. And then when you have those finished, I'm also going to weave these ends in, I will meet you back to sew this all together. Once you've completed all your squares, you're ready to put together your scarf. You will need a darning needle and a pair of scissors. In my case, I've chosen to do 12 squares altogether for the length of my scarf. You can choose to do it however long or short you wish, depending on who you're making it for. And there's many different ways you can put this together. So I'm choosing to create bigger triangles from my smaller triangles. So in this case, I'd like the two cream-colored triangles to sit next to each other. And the next one would have the two the next one would have the two pink ones sitting together. So it creates a bigger triangle effect. I've also chosen to do it this way because the two border colors are the same, and so they'll match. I just like doing that because it'll make it a little easier to sew them together. So you will also need the same color yarn that you used for your scarf. So in this case, I'm going to use the same cream color by Lion Brand that I have here. And then I will also eventually use some of that pink. But right now I'm going to focus on doing just my sides with all the beige ends here. So let's get started. First off, I want to cut off the length. First off, I want to cut out the length that I'll need to sew in my sides. So I know that these squares are 5 inches in length, so I'm going to give myself a couple of extra inches there, so maybe about almost 10 or 12 inches. And I'm just going to snip it there. Okay, and then the next thing I will do is I will thread my yarn through, whoop, careful not to split it. I'll thread my yarn through my darning needle. Sometimes if the yarn is a little bit more loosely wound, it can be a bit tricky to pull through. Okay, so now don't worry in the beginning if your squares are still a little bit wonky in shape. You can block your squares beforehand. I'm choosing to do it after. That way it'll all kind of sit nicely together and stretch in the same fashion. So these are my front sides, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the front sides facing each other. Now, if you recall, when we made our squares, we made sure that we have 16 stitches across each side. So this way we should be able to match all of our stitches nicely together. The first thing you want to do is find your corner. So I see here I've got a corner right there. That's my chain 2 corner, and I have my chain 2 corner right there on this one. So I'm going to make sure that I line up these stitches nicely, and I'm going to whip stitch this together very similarly to how I actually did the triangles. So first I want to secure my corners, so I'm going to insert my hook into the corner. If I can find that space. I'm keeping it with the same color yarn though. I'm going to keep it with the cream color. So I've got it there, and I'm also going to insert it right there. So I'm going to pull that through, and what I want to do is I just want to tie a little knot to secure it. And I usually like to do a few just to make it really nice and snug. And you can weave this in at the end or just sew over top of it as you go. So sometimes I like to sew over top of it as I go. Okay, so here is where the fun begins. So we want to identify the first stitch together. So I can see right here that this is my first stitch here, and this one is my first stitch here. Okay, see that? Now what I'm doing, like I did with the triangles, is I'm just picking up the outside loop of that stitch. So hopefully you can see it there. So if I just use this as an example where we can see it a little bit better. The stitch here, the full stitch is the V right there, okay? But I am only going to pick up the outside loop of that stitch. So the outside loop on that one and the outside loop on this one. And then I'll just insert through. I'm just going to do that a little closer to where I need to be. So my first stitch is right there after the knot. And so my first stitch on this side is right here after the knot. So I'm just going to put that through. Now, oops, see how I did that accidentally? I went through both the full stitch here. I don't want to go through the whole stitch. I only want to go through the outside loop there. Okay. Oh, looks like my yarn is being very splitty. There we go. So you insert it through, pull through, and there we go. So I'm just going to keep moving my tail here. And I'm going to continue doing that all the way through. Actually, I'll just leave that tail out so it won't get in the way right now. So again, I'm going to pick up the next stitch, the outside loop. Now I'm going to identify the next stitch facing it. Now see this one? This is a tight stitch in here, so it would have been very easy to miss that. So you just want to be careful to really pay attention to all of your stitches. And remember, of course, counting is key. So we insert that through there, pull through. You want it snug, but you don't want it to be too tight, right? You want your scarf to have a little bit of give. So we put that through, and then we continue on. So the next stitch, the outside loop is there. The stitch in front of it, the outside loop is there. I'll make sure not to split my yarn there. Insert it through, pull through. Oops, get that tail out of the way. And there we have it. And we go again into the next one and the next one on the outside. And we pull through. And we'll do that one more time. We identify the outside loop and the outside loop of this one, needle through, and pull. Okay, so as you can see, if I were to open it, you're going to get this really nice join here. Okay, so you're going to do that all the way to the end. And you're going to do that with all of your squares, one by one. You're attaching the next one to the next one. And you're going to continue through. So what I recommend you do is pause the video and go all the way to the end of this corner, and we'll meet you there. So I've come to the end of whip stitching my first two squares together. I just have a little tail here, so I just wove it in back and forth and knotted it a little bit. I'm going to do it one more time here. I really like to make sure my ends are nice and secure. In fact, I love weaving in ends. I know a lot of people really detest it, but I don't know, I just find it's fun in a weird way, making sure that all your little tails get hidden away. So I'm just going to keep kind of going back and forth inside these stitches here, just to make sure that everything is nice and secure. And then eventually I'll just cut that tail out too. So when you open it up on the other side, you've got this really neat little join that you can barely really tell. Just looks like the two colors have seamed together. I really like that. Okay, so now with our next one, so see, it's starting to kind of even out a little bit more. And then again, we're going to do a final border around the outside. So any leftover little wonkiness should take care of itself. So because I like the smaller V's to create a larger V, I want my next square to make sure that whatever this color is here is going to match up here, which is what I've done with the cream colored. Okay, so I've got these two. Now notice here though, because I've been doing it in contrasting colors, like each pink triangle got a cream border, each cream triangle got a pink border. And so now we have pink borders to contend with here. So now I want to make sure that I'm going to sew in this side with the pink color. So I'm just going to take a little snippet of that, maybe about 10 or 12 inches there. And then I will proceed to do the same. So I'm going to take the front side of my work. You just want to make sure that is the front side of your work. And I'm going to fold it over so the front sides are facing each other. So now we have the back sides facing out. And I'm going to do the same thing I did in this one here. I'm going to thread my yarn through. And I'm going to make sure I'm going to start off in the corner and I'm going to secure my corner here. So I'm going to start right in that space there in the corner, and right in this corner here. Whoops, I can find it. Okay. Okay, so, oops, I'm going to just secure it here, tie a couple little knots to make sure it doesn't go anywhere. And we're going to do the same thing here with the pink. So we want to make sure we identify the first stitch after the knot. So my first stitch after the knot on this side is this first pink one right there, okay? And then the first stitch after the knot on this side is this, actually this cream one right here, because the stitch, oops, the stitch went into the tight one right next to it. So it's going to go right in there. I'm going to pull through gently but firmly, and it's going to start working its way through. Again, making sure to catch the outside loops of these stitches. So into the next one, I'm going to take the outside loop, and now this one is a tight stitch here, so it belongs here, outside loop of that one. And we're going to feed our yarn through. Okay, and again, outside, be careful not to split your yarn. It's really, this particular yarn is a little bit splitty, we'll call it. Okay, and in the next loop, outside loops. And in the next one, outside loops. And you're just going to keep doing that all the way until you hit the end, and you will secure your corner with a knot or two, and you will do that for every single square in your scarf until you are done all your squares, and then we'll be ready to do a border around it. And again, test out the length. You may put all your squares together and, you know, actually put it around your neck and then realize, oh, this is not as long as I thought it was going to be, or maybe it's a bit too long depending on what you wanted to do. So this is also a good time where you can decide if you need to make more squares, you can make more squares, or if you need to just unravel a square or two, that you can do that too. But chances are people usually end up needing to make a few more squares instead of taking squares away. Okay, and here we are at the end. Just gonna find that last outside loops there, and then just before I cinch it, I'm just going to feed it through there to kind of create a little knot effect, and then I will just kind of weave it, weave it in back and forth just to secure it there in all different directions, and it just anchors that end there. And again, don't worry about these little bumpadoodles there. They are going to all be worked out once we get our border going. Okay, so I'm just looping it again a few more times. I always like to do extra, I like to have a little bit more extra precaution untying my tails there. Okay, so here we go. We've now done a seam with the cream, and we've just finished the seam with the pink. Look at how pretty that looks. So once you get all your squares together, then we will work on a border, and then you can block it and it's going to look fantastic. Super loving this so far. So go ahead and sew together all of your squares until you have the length that you like. Make sure to secure your ends, your weaving ends, and then weave them all in at the end. and we'll get you going on a border row, and then you're ready to go with this beautiful V-stitch triangle scarf. So stop the video and I will meet you back when you're ready to do your border. Once you've sewn all of your squares together, it's time to do the border. So my scarf consists of 12 squares and I guess 24 triangles. So this is how mine came out. I kept all of the colors close together to make larger triangles. Okay, so we are going to start. I'm choosing to use the pink color, even though one side has pink and one side has cream. I decided that I'm going to do the whole border in the pink. So we're going to start with a slip knot. And we're going to begin in the corner here. Okay. This is where the magic's going to happen, because all of these little wonkly bits are going to just merge nicely into this beautiful little border. So I'm going to find my corner spot here, and I'm going to insert my hook, and I'm going to choose to go right in there. And usually people would do a slip stitch here. Actually, I changed my mind. I'm going to yarn over first and then insert my hook, because I'm going to choose to do half double crochets all the way around, and I'm going to go right ahead and start with a half double crochet right off the bat. So I'll yarn over again, and don't worry, this little bit will be a bit fiddly at the beginning. Pull through. So, whoop, I let it go around too much. So yarn over, insert my hook, pull through, and notice I had to keep this secured here because we do want to have 3 loops on the hook. Then you'll yarn over and pull through all 3. And so this just gives me height right away. So that's a half double crochet. And don't worry about this little tail here. We're going to weave that in at the end. So we're going to proceed by doing half double crochets all the way across. So I'm just going to go into the next natural stitch there. So I'll yarn over, insert my hook, and remember, you have 3 loops on your hook for a half double crochet. You'll yarn over, but you'll pull through all 3. Oops. So a double crochet, you would pull through 2, yarn over, and pull through 2 again. But with a half double, we are just going to pull through all 3 of those, loops. Oops, sorry, my camera is not focusing very well. So we'll yarn over, insert our hook, pull through, yarn over, pull through all 3. Whoops, see, I almost forgot myself there. Okay, so we're going to continue down the side here, proceeding to do half double crochets, 1 into each stitch across. Just nice and even, just going into, whoops, be careful not to split your yarn. So you're going to do that all the way down the side of your scarf. So go ahead and do that, and I'm going to meet you just when we cross over into the next square here. I'm just coming up to my last stitch here on my first square, and I'm just going to proceed as usual. I'm going to yarn over, and then I'm going to do a half double crochet into the very next stitch, pull through all 3. Now here is where we're coming to a join. What we want to do is yarn over as usual and find a spot somewhere in the center of this join. So I've found a great little space right through there. Just gently insert your hook, pull through, yarn over, and pull through all 3 of those loops. So that's just going to close up that seam gap there. Now you're going to continue on. Yarn over, and into this very next stitch here, you'll just insert your hook as usual. Whoops, be a little fiddly there. Yarn over, and remember, half double crochet is pulling through all 3 of those loops. And we'll continue on to the next few stitches. Pull through all 3, yarn over, insert, pull through all 3, and you're just going to continue like this all the way down your side. Now, I'm going to take that out so you can see. Look at how pretty that's coming out. So see how this edge is just straightening out so beautifully? So just go ahead and do that all the way to the end of your scarf, the end of your edge here, and then we'll just talk about how to round the corners there. Okay, I'll meet you back here at the end. We are coming up to the end of our side here, so we have 1 more stitch to go. Do a half double crochet in there. We're now at our corner. So just as we did previously when we were doing the initial border here, we did a single crochet and a chain 2 to go around that border. So we're going to do something similar. We're going to insert our hook into that space of the corner and pull through. We're going to do a half double crochet. So remember, that's 3 loops on the hook, yarn over, and you're going to pull through all 2. So see, it takes you right nicely to the corner there. And we are going to half double crochet again into that corner. There we go. So instead of chaining, I'm going to just fill this corner with 3 half double crochets. Just like that. So it just creates this pretty little fan effect. It goes around the bend there. And now I'm just going to go into the very next stitch, which is right there, and continue with my half double crochets. And see how pretty that is? It just rounds around the corner there. I'm going to continue on just to do a few more so you can get the effect here. And so we're yarning over first still, but we're going to pull through all 3. Look at how pretty that looks. So exciting. So there we have it. That's how you're going to do each corner all the way around. So as you can see, this border is really, has straightened out a lot of those little wonky, kooky edges. Wow, I really love how that turned out. So now some people, what they could or would do is maybe they would stick with the pink on this side and the cream on the other side just to kind of maintain that colorway. I think I'm just going to keep it uniform all the way around. But what will be neat is on this side you'll see a nice little contrast. So continue around all the corners and I will meet you at the end. I am now coming up to my last corner here. So I'm doing my half double crochet and now I'm into the last corner. So we're going to do 3 half double crochets into this corner to round it out nicely. So that is the second one and the third one. Okay, and here's our original little tail to start with. So, I'm so excited. I'm going to fasten this off. Sorry, I'm going to snip the yarn, and now I'm going to do that kind of invisible join I like to do. So I'm actually going to pull this all the way through, all the way out. Okay, and then I am going to thread this end through my yarn needle here. Whoops. Okay, so that's going through there. Now what I'm going to do, see how this ended up having a stitch that's kind of hanging out there? I'm actually going to go in underneath. I'm going to feed that through. And now I'm going to go through the top of this stitch here. Okay, so I'm going to go through the top there and feed it down through the bottom of that full stitch. I'll pull it through, and as I pull it through, you can see on the top that that looks like a regular stitch. So you see, it looks fairly seamless. You just want to pull it a little snug but not too tight, and that makes it look like it's just a nice smooth join. So love that. Okay, so what I have to make sure that I do on the back is that I just weave it in a couple of times to secure it in place. Again, gently, because I don't want to pull it too tight, because then it'll bunch up the work up here. So I just make sure it stays nice and smooth. And then what I'll do too, because this end is floating around, I'll just gently tie it together to really secure it. Careful not to pinch it too much. And then what I'll do is I'll weave these two ends in and hide them somewhere. Okay, I might just do another knot here. And there we have it. We have our triangle V-stitch scarf. Isn't that nice?